Some people enter a room and disappear into it, like a drop of ink in a dark ocean. And then there are people whose arrival rewrites the atmosphere, not because they demand attention, but because they don't. Scorpio, you are that second kind. You don't chase the spotlight, yet the spotlight finds you like it's been searching. It's the strangest paradox. The quieter you become, the louder the world feels you. A few seconds near you, and people start adjusting their posture, editing their words, polishing their smiles, as if your presence is a silent audition they didn't prepare for. They call it intensity. They call it mystery. But the truth is simpler and sharper. They feel something in you that cannot be negotiated with, and that makes them uncomfortable in a way they can't explain without admitting what they're hiding. The envy begins before you speak. It starts in the space between your steps. It's in the way you can sit in silence without scrambling to fill it. Most people fear silence because silence is where the truth crawls out. Silence is where your own thoughts stop being background noise and become a courtroom. But you, Scorpio, have learned to sit there. You have made a home inside the quiet. You don't just tolerate it, you wield it. And that is the first real reason they envy you, but won't say out loud. You have an inner world that doesn't beg for permission. You don't need constant reassurance. You don't need constant applause. You don't need a crowd to feel real. You can be alone and still feel whole. For people who are addicted to external validation, that kind of self-contained power feels like sorcery. They look at you and they sense boundaries. Not the loud, dramatic kind that argues and explains and pleads, but the quiet kind that simply exists. The kind that says, without a single word, not everyone gets access. Many people have built their lives on easy entry, easy intimacy, easy manipulation, easy emotional borrowing. They lean on others like crutches and call it connection. You do not. You don't borrow your identity from whoever is near you. You don't dilute yourself to be digestible. And the envy grows darker because you represent the one thing they cannot control. A soul that knows its own value even when no one claps for it. Your eyes don't just look, they listen, they read, they measure. People feel that. They feel watched in a way that isn't creepy, but clarifying. They feel like you notice what they were hoping would go unnoticed. The small tremor behind the confident voice, the sweetness that's actually manipulation, the compliment that's actually a hook, the laugh that's actually a shield. You don't need to accuse anyone. You don't need to confront them. Your presence alone is confrontation for those living behind masks. And here is the second reason they envy you but can't admit. You are a mirror they didn't ask for. You reflect their contradictions back at them. You make them face themselves without trying. That kind of natural truth is rare, and anything rare becomes a target. Sometimes their envy wears a polite face. It becomes concern. It becomes, I just don't know about Scorpio energy. It becomes, you're too intense. It becomes, you're hard to read. They dress their discomfort in language that sounds reasonable, because saying, I'm intimidated by your clarity, would reveal too much about their own fog. So they call you secretive. They call you guarded. They call you cold. But what they are really feeling is that you do not offer cheap access to your inner world, and they hate that because it forces them to earn what they've been taking from others for free. You've noticed it, haven't you? The way certain people only feel safe when you are smaller, when you are softer, when you are uncertain, when you are apologizing for having a spine. They don't mind your power as long as it serves them. They don't mind your intuition as long as it protects their lies. They don't mind your loyalty as long as it can be exploited. But the moment you stop over-explaining, the moment you stop chasing, the moment you stop keeping doors cracked open for people who don't deserve to return, their envy ignites. Because the third reason they won't say out loud is this: you don't need them. And nothing terrifies an insecure person like realizing they are not necessary. They envy the way you walk away, not with noise, not with revenge speeches, not with dramatic posts. You just vanish. You withdraw so quietly that your absence becomes a haunting. And the people who benefited from your presence, your attention, your emotional labor, your patience, feel the loss like a sudden winter. They'll pretend you're the villain because admitting, "I miss your depth," would require humility. They will rewrite the story so they can feel superior. They will label you controlling because you refuse to be controlled. They will label you obsessive because your love was loyal. They will label you manipulative because you see manipulation clearly. Projection is a strange perfume. People spray it on you so they don't have to smell themselves. And still, beneath your calm, you carry storms. Not storms that destroy for pleasure, but storms that cleanse. You've had to become someone who can survive emotional fire without turning to ash. You've been betrayed in ways that forced you to rebuild your identity from the ground up. You've watched endings happen in slow motion. You've learned how to mourn privately and continue publicly. You have trained yourself to hold pain without handing it to the wrong hands. That is why your presence feels heavy to those who avoid depth. Because your energy says, "I have been to the bottom and I came back." And the fourth reason they envy you in silence is because they can't imagine surviving what you've survived without becoming bitter, yet you still carry tenderness beneath the armor. They envy your tenderness most of all because it is not naive. It is sacredly selective. You are not soft because you are unaware. You are soft because you chose to remain human after everything tried to harden you. That is a rare kind of courage. Many people become sharp and call it strength. You became discerning and call it peace. And that peace is a threat to anyone who feeds on chaos. You don't participate in petty games for long. You don't stay in spaces that require you to shrink. You don't do half love, half truth, half loyalty. For you, devotion is not a vibe, it's a vow. And people who live in half measures envy the way you live in whole. Your life is not built on illusion. Your joy is real, your pain is real, your loyalty is real, your boundaries are real. And in a world that survives on performance, realness can feel violent. Not because you are cruel, but because the truth stings when someone has been lying to themselves for years. This is why some people don't just envy you, they resent you. You didn't do anything to them, yet your existence triggers their insecurity. Your composure exposes their neediness. Your self-respect exposes their compromises. Your quiet exposes their noise. And they will never say the real reason out loud, because the real reason would sound like confession. Here is the darker part, the part that people whisper about but can't fully explain. They envy the way life seems to back you up. They notice that when someone wrongs you, things start shifting around them. Not in a cartoonish way, not in a magical threat, but in the subtle way energy works when truth is involved. People who lie eventually trip over their own stories. People who manipulate eventually get exposed. People who treat others as disposable eventually feel the emptiness they created. And because you are a sign associated with consequence, with transformation, with endings that lead to rebirth, people associate your presence with karmic intensity. They start believing that crossing you comes with a cost. not because you curse them, but because you refuse to participate in the lie. And the fifth reason they envy you is because they want that kind of energetic protection without doing the inner work to earn it. And because you are a sign associated with consequence, with transformation, with endings that lead to rebirth, people associate your presence with karmic intensity. They start believing that crossing you comes with a cost, not because you curse them, but because you refuse to participate in the lie. And the fifth reason they envy you is because they want that kind of energetic protection without doing the inner work to earn it. They want your aura without your wounds. They want your confidence without your nights of rebuilding. They want your discernment without your betrayals. They want your depth without your loneliness. They want your magnetism without your standards. They want your power without your responsibility. And when they realize they cannot shortcut the process, the envy turns sour. They try to make your strength look like arrogance. They try to make your boundaries look like cruelty. They try to make your intuition look like paranoia. They try to make your stillness look like coldness. Because if they can shame your power, they can feel less inferior next to it. But you are not here to be understood by everyone. That's the lesson Scorpio learns again and again. Understanding is rare currency. You do not pay for it with your soul. You don't trade your truth for belonging. You don't betray yourself to be accepted by people who only love the version of you that is convenient. And that's the sixth reason they envy you. You choose yourself, not selfishly, not dramatically, quietly, steadily. You choose your integrity over approval. You choose your peace over proving. You choose your standards over settling. And in a world that trains people to abandon themselves for love, your self-loyalty looks like rebellion. You can feel it when the room changes, can't you? When you walk in and the energy tightens. When certain people suddenly get louder. When someone tries to make a joke at your expense. When compliments feel like traps, when friendliness feels forced, when you sense that you are being watched, measured, compared. You are not imagining it. You are not too sensitive. You are tuned in. Scorpio is a sign of radar. You pick up frequencies others ignore. And the seventh reason they envy you is because your intuition is not just emotional, it's accurate. People hate being accurately perceived. It's like being seen naked while still wearing clothes. Your existence disrupts the comfortable. You remind people that depth is possible, that truth is possible, that change is possible, that you can lose what you thought you needed and still become more yourself afterward. And when someone has built their entire identity on stability, that is actually stagnation. Your transformation threatens them, because you are living evidence that endings are not punishments, they are purification. You do not cling to what wants to leave. You bury it properly. You grieve privately. And then you bloom again in a new form that doesn't require the old pain. People envy that because they are still clinging to what is already dead inside their lives. You don't just survive, you transmute. You take poison and turn it into medicine. You take heartbreak and turn it into discernment. You take betrayal and turn it into boundaries. You take loneliness and turn it into self-knowledge. That is the alchemy of Scorpio. And people who have never met their own depths will always envy those who have, because deep people cannot be easily fooled. Deep people cannot be easily bought. Deep people cannot be easily guilted into shrinking. Deep people carry the kind of power that doesn't need a stage. And because that is rare, you often walk alone, not because you are unlovable, but because you refuse to be loved cheaply. You would rather be alone than be half-held. That choice is terrifying to people who settle, and that is why the envy returns again and again, like a shadow that follows light. They won't say the real reason out loud, Scorpio, because saying it would require vulnerability. It would require admitting that they see your inner strength, and it reminds them of their own inner emptiness. It would require admitting that your silence makes them confront their need for noise. It would require admitting that your boundaries highlight their lack of self-respect. It would require admitting that your transformation exposes their stagnation. So instead, they tell stories, they label, they whisper, they project. They act like your presence is a problem because it's easier than admitting their insecurity is the problem. So let them misunderstand you. Let them call you mysterious. Let them call you intense. Let them call you difficult. You were never meant to be everyone's comfort. You were meant to be truth's witness. You were meant to be the sign that proves fire can be sacred, that darkness can be healing, that endings can be mercy, that loyalty can be holy, that silence can be power. You are not here to be liked by people who cannot handle depth. You are here to be remembered by those who recognize it. And when envy finds you, as it often does, don't take it as proof that something is wrong with you. Take it as proof that something in you is real. Envy doesn't follow the invisible. It follows the luminous. It follows the untouchable calm. It follows the person who won't bend for approval. It follows the soul that refuses to betray itself. Keep your standards. Keep your softness. Keep your fire. Keep your quiet. Your silence has never been weakness. It is the temple where your power lives. This narrative is a mirror, a reflection of a potential pattern, a story whispered into the universe for those who are meant to hear it. And it isn't here to declare fate or assign blame, only to offer clarity, the kind that feels like a soft light on the inside of your ribs. If it resonates with you, Scorpio, take what strengthens you and leave the rest behind without fear. Because not every message is for every soul, and your life is not ruled by a script, but guided by your choices, your healing, your wisdom, and the quiet courage it takes to become yourself again and again.